The school bully got rejected and then set his sights on me, an unsuspecting bystander. I was so freaked out that I grabbed the shirt collar of the aloof school hunk and blurted out, "I like someone else." "It's him." Who would have thought the school hunk's ears would turn red, and he'd actually agree to my confession? To clear up the misunderstanding, I quickly broke up with him, claiming he was too boring and indifferent. That night, he pinned me against a tree and demanded a kiss, saying, "So you like them wild, huh? You should have just said so." I bumped into the school bully's confession scene. I was about to clap and cheer when the girl coldly rejected him. "Sorry, I don't like you, so I won't be with you." My mouth moved faster than my brain, and I shouted, "Oh my gosh, this is awesome." As soon as those words left my mouth, the place went silent, and my heart skipped a beat. I quickly covered my mouth. The girl shoved a huge bouquet of red roses back at Henry and walked away. Henry followed the sound and immediately spotted me, his face dark as thunder filled with resentment. My mind went blank, with only a few thoughts. I'm doomed. I'm in big trouble. Henry is notorious at S University for being carefree and reckless. He's good-looking, comes from a powerful family, and is fierce in fights. Getting publicly rejected was bad enough for him. If he thinks I'm gloating, he might just crush me. Just imagining it made me shake with fear, especially as Henry walked toward me. I instinctively backed away, trying to explain, "It's a misunderstanding, I didn't mean it that way." Henry smirked, raising an eyebrow. Seeing him get closer, I shut my eyes in fear. Suddenly, my hand felt heavy as he stuffed the roses in it. "Isn't that what you meant?" Henry said disdainfully when he saw my confused face. "I got rejected, and you're cheering, so clearly you like me, right?" My eyes widened in confusion. Henry crossed his arms, a confident smirk on his face. "Don't pretend. If you like me, there's no need to be shy. I'll give you the chance to be my girlfriend." I shook even more, not out of excitement, but fear. If Henry became my boyfriend, I wouldn't stand a chance in life. "No, no, no, you misunderstood. It's not like that." Henry's face darkened immediately. "You really don't like me? Or are you just pretending?" He gave me one chance to answer, his words threatening. I felt like I was on the hot seat, agreeing would be torturous, but refusing would embarrass the school bully again, making it even worse for me. My mind raced, trying to find a way out. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a familiar figure. Johnny, the school heartthrob, cool and indifferent, walking through as if nothing here mattered to him. My eyes lit up with an idea. If I confessed to the school heartthrob in front of the bully and got rejected like him, maybe he'd feel a bit better and let me off the hook too. With that thought, I wasted no time grabbing Johnny's shirt. "Hey, you," Johnny started, surprised. Before he could finish, I said loudly, "The person I like is Johnny." Johnny was startled. I leaned toward him, speaking earnestly, "Johnny, will you be my boyfriend?" Gasps erupted around us. I gazed at him expectantly, thinking, "Reject me, quick. Say something about how I'm shooting for the stars, and humiliate me." Johnny looked into my eyes, his cool demeanor unchanged. Before he could speak, I pinched my thigh in anticipation, tears welling up from the pain. "Sure," he replied. My almost tears stopped short. Johnny's ears turned red, blush spreading down to his neck. The cheering grew louder around us, forming a small circle of excitement. Confession success. Everyone seemed thrilled except for me and Henry. Especially Henry, who looked furious, eyeing Johnny and me, veins bulging visibly on his forehead. "You too? Using me as part of your plan, huh?" he shouted, raising a fist. My scalp tingled with fear. "Calm down, Henry." He glared at me, unclenched a finger from his fist, and declared, "I wish you happiness." Before dashing off, tears in his eyes. Feeling down, I turned to Johnny, just about to explain everything as a misunderstanding. But before I could speak, he extended his hand. "Wanna go? I'll walk you back to your dorm." Johnny's fingers were long and slender, catching the sunlight beautifully. His gentle smile felt like a grip around my neck. Every word I wanted to say got caught in my throat. In a daze, I reached for his hand, feeling its warmth and my racing heartbeat. I couldn't believe it even after getting back to my dorm. Staring blankly at my phone, I saw Johnny's friend request had just been accepted 10 minutes ago. The misunderstanding was huge, and I needed to clear it up fast. I quickly drafted a message, but before sending it, Johnny sent a photo. Opening it, my breath hitched. It was a mirror selfie of him, shirtless, showing off defined muscles and water droplets on his abs. His hair was damp, features sharp and handsome. I was shocked by how an apparently cool and distant face hid such a striking physique. Tears of frustration trickled down my cheek. Johnny messaged, "Oops, sent the wrong thing by mistake. It's past the 3-minute limit. What can I do?" Why did I feel like he was deliberately tempting me? That thought scared me, so I quickly shook my head. Impossible. Johnny was the heartthrob of S University, with the complete opposite reputation to Henry. Detached and reserved, he seemed untouchable, always looking distant. Our first meeting was when he gave a speech as a new student. From the audience, I admired his bright and outstanding figure. We had crossed paths a few times since, mostly at joint faculty events. Two lines that never cross, briefly graze past each other. In a blink, they vanish into the crowd. So, why did he agree to my confession? I pressed my lips, staring at my phone screen, deep in thought. But Johnny kept messaging me, "Are you asleep? Why aren't you replying?" He even sent an emoji of a puppy with teary eyes. Is it because I only have a 6-pack? It's fine, I can train more, trust me. Or, is there something else you like? Let me know. Don't be shy. I'm begging you, please reply. My phone kept buzzing until my hands felt numb. I couldn't help but smirk, remembering what people said about Johnny on the confession page. He was all business, never chit-chatting, always just okay or received. Looking at him now, could he be possessed or something? I curled my lips, suddenly wanting to tease him. Seeing is pointless unless you let me touch. Next time I saw Johnny, before I knew it, he dragged me to a secluded corner. I leaned against the wall, trembling, looking at him. What do you want? Johnny raised his brows, towering over me completely. Didn't you say you wanted to touch the abs? He leaned in, grabbing my wrist, sliding my hand under his shirt. Go ahead, feel them. A faint scent of cedar surrounded me entirely. Our distance was closing in, my breath hitched, my heart raced uncontrollably. Dude, you're serious? I was just... I stammered, but upon the touch, my fingertips felt like they were shocked by electricity, making me shiver. I was just talking big. I blurted out, my face flushed red. Just as quickly, the grip on my wrist vanished. That's it? I heard Johnny chuckle lightly next to my ear. Feeling his warmth lingered on my fingertips, embarrassment and annoyance flashed through me as I shot him a glare. You. He mimicked my stammering, amusement dancing in his eyes. Free this afternoon, wanna catch a movie? He waved his phone, showing 2 movie ticket confirmations. His eager expression left me speechless. The words to clear up the misunderstanding stuck in my throat, only to become a hesitant, sure. So, 3 in the afternoon, meet you outside the dorm. He said and brushed a light kiss on the corner of my lips. The gentle touch disrupted my breathing even more, and before I could react, he turned and left hastily. I stared dumbfoundedly at his back, lifting a hand to touch the spot he kissed. A gentle breeze passed, the thumping of my heart caused slight ripples. At that moment, I was unsure if it was the wind or feelings stirring. In the dorm room, I stood in front of the full-length mirror, applying new lip gloss and pouting lightly. The curling iron made perfect waves in my chestnut brown hair. The plaid skirt looked sharp and straightforward. Everything seemed so perfect, and I surprisingly felt a bit of anticipation in my heart. Could I really be falling for Johnny? A head popped out silently behind me. I instinctively turned. My roommate Jane had returned without me noticing and was right in my face. I jumped back in shock, but she just squinted her eyes playfully. She seemed to sniff out some gossip, excitement glimmering in her eyes. My fingers recalled Johnny's warmth and the gentle kiss at the corner of my lips, bringing a guilty flutter. No, no way. I denied it in a hurry. Jane clicked her tongue, looking all-knowing, and patted my shoulder with a smile. Better hurry, I saw Johnny down there for quite a while when I came back. I was taken aback. I rushed to the balcony, and sure enough, spotted his familiar figure pacing back and forth. I didn't know how long he had been waiting, but he seemed to really be looking forward to your date. He must like you too. Why else would he waste his time like that? Jane said, eyes alight with excitement, and then she pushed me toward the dorm door. Good luck on your date. She made a cheering gesture as she pushed me out, leaving me unable to say anything before she closed the door decisively with a loud bang. Why is she even more excited than I am? At the bottom, I met Johnny successfully. I glanced back at my dorm. Jane predictably was at the window, her excitement visible even from the third floor. Our eyes met, and she did a little gesture, tapping her lips with 2 fingers. Trying to make out her lips sync, I whispered, remember to kiss more? Johnny walking beside me didn't catch that. What did you say just now? My face flushed red instantly. Nothing at all. I shook my head so vigorously it almost turned into a bobblehead. Thankfully, Johnny didn't pry further, and I could discreetly breathe a sigh of relief. We walked together along the campus path. Fingers occasionally brushed against each other. I lowered my head, hiding my emotions. From the corner of my eye, I noticed Johnny pause, seemingly hesitant about something. Next moment, his big hand clasped around mine, fingers intertwining. We took a cab to the mall, the atmosphere somewhat subtle and awkward. I bit my lip, summoning courage to tell him about the misunderstanding of my confession. But the cab reached its destination before I could speak. Got something to say? Johnny glanced at me, inquiring quietly. But since it was a temporary stop, seeing the busy traffic, I suggested getting off first. No big deal, let's go. The words on the tip of my tongue once again got swallowed back. Thanks to the weekend, the mall was crowded. To save time, Johnny and I decided to split up. I went to get tickets, and he lined up for bubble tea, meeting back at the theater. What to drink? I pondered with a finger on my chin, unable to decide as usual, falling into a little dilemma. After a minute or two, Johnny and I blurted at the same time, matcha red bean, 3/4 sugar, light ice. Exact same words, in sync. I was amazed. You like this too? Johnny nodded, yeah. Then, looking into my eyes, he spoke slowly, I really do. His gentle smile left me momentarily brainless. I'll go get the tickets now. Afraid to look at him any longer, I sprinted towards the cinema direction. 2 tickets printed out just as a hand reached out for them ahead of me. Is that me? I looked back to find Henry's angular face. A plaster on his forehead, got hurt somehow again. His laid-back demeanor seemed even more reckless now. What a coincidence, out on a date. While talking, he glanced at the movie ticket he was holding and clicked his tongue. Johnny, that rascal, he got us tickets for the couple's seats again. His voice was loud enough for everyone around to hear. My face turned beet red in an instant, and I rushed forward to snatch the ticket back. Shut up. Give it back to me. But Henry was tall. He just stepped back and held the ticket high up. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't reach it. Don't rush. Who said I wouldn't give it to you? I just have some questions. Answer them, and you get your ticket back, okay? I was out of patience, especially with that annoying grin of his, making my hands itch to smack him. So I snapped, spit it out already. Henry smirked, his voice softening. you don't really like Johnny, do you? My heart skipped a beat and I glared at him. Who told you that? I said, feeling a bit guilty. Listening to my tone, Henry seemed more convinced, looking all smug. I did some digging and found out you and Johnny barely meet. You're either in class or holed up in your dorm, not even bothering to see him. You don't show the slightest hint of liking or crushing on him. With every word Henry said, my face grew paler. So, did you tell Johnny you liked him on the spur of the moment just to reject my confession because he happened to pass by? He squinted and looked down at me. Having my cover blown wide open, I felt guilty to the bone, my knees even began to tremble. Bad news, Henry knows I've been lying, and I might end up in deep trouble. Even worse news, if Johnny finds out I tricked him too, things could get even uglier. Henry seemed to read my mind and smiled, pinching my cheek. What do you say? If I tell Johnny he's been played, how do you think he'd react? He's quite the heartthrob at S University, rejecting countless love confessions. Why do you think he agreed to yours, huh? Probably because you're a bit special to him. Yet here you are, tricking him. Do you think he'd be furious and perhaps lash out at you? Just hearing Henry say that made me imagine those scenarios myself, making me shiver. What? What do you want? Just give me your contact info, and I'll let you know later. After adding Henry as a contact, he finally returned my movie ticket. Then he waved goodbye, disappearing into the elevator. Relieved, I stood there, glad to send this troublemaker away. But turning around, I saw Johnny standing right behind me. My heart nearly leaped out of my chest. You're back? I tried to act cool, praying he just got here and heard nothing. But Johnny's face was stern, the mood around him heavy. He responded with a brief yeah, showing no emotion. Only then did I notice the 2 milk teas in his hand, all leaking. The bottom of the cups had burst, and the tea was dripping down his arm. My eye twitched, and I quickly handed him tissues. What happened? Here, wipe up. Johnny took them and methodically cleaned himself. During the entire process, I barely dared to breathe. Watching for any emotion on his face, but found none. Then Johnny spoke softly, maybe it was faulty. No problem, I'll get 2 more. There's still 10 minutes before the movie starts, plenty of time. With everything cleaned up, Johnny threw the mess away. Behind him, I sighed in relief. Good thing. Seems like he doesn't know a thing. His face didn't even change from losing the milk teas he lined up for. I gotta say, he's pretty steady with his emotions. Alright, got the tickets, let's go together. Yeah. 10 minutes later, the movie began, and we were in our seats. I occasionally glanced at his profile, so perfect it made my heart skip. Jane and Henry's words echoed relentlessly in my mind. He must like you. Why else spend the time unless you're special to him? I bit my lip, my fingers fidgeting on my knees, struggling internally. I figured I should just come clean sooner rather than later. Johnny, actually. I lowered my voice, and he leaned in to hear better. But in the next second, my phone screen lit up. A contact flashed, Henry. Startled, I quickly locked my screen. Johnny watched me, his eyes holding something unreadable. Is something up? My nerves getting the best of me, everything I carefully rehearsed scattered to the wind. Yet Henry's messages popped up non-stop. Screen lit, then locked again. You know what, I'm just gonna hit the bathroom real quick. Without waiting, I slipped out. Johnny said nothing further. But as I walked to the bathroom, an eerie chill ran down my spine. Was it just me? Once inside, I finally checked Henry's message. It was a girl's picture with a chat screenshot from Henry. Henry, you've got a week to help me get this girl to go out with me. I couldn't help rolling my eyes at his audacity. Playing out some rich kid romance novel plot, huh? A week, right, does he think I look like a week? But I did find the photo a bit familiar. Wasn't she the girl Henry confessed to the other day? Still chasing after her, huh? Looking through the chat, it was enough to make me roll my eyes back into my head. I smirked and sent Henry a link to a cheap cleaning agent. Buddy, I can't help with your girl troubles. But here's a link, maybe use it and clean yourself up a bit. Bestseller, can't go wrong. There was silence for about half a minute before he seemed to catch the sarcasm. Henry, now flustered, flooded my messages with responses. I simply blocked him, bringing silence back to my world. For the rest of the movie, I was restless, contemplating how I'd open up to Johnny. Until night fell. As we walked back, under the dim streetlights and soft moonlight, we found ourselves navigating the narrow pebble path, me trailing right behind him. Just as he was about to reach the exit, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. I was daydreaming and accidentally bumped right into his back. My nose stung, and I couldn't help but stagger back a few steps. Johnny had already turned to look at me, but just as he raised a hand to help, it fell back down. Have you, he started, been wanting to tell me something? The night was dark, and I couldn't see his face hidden in the shadows. I sighed and finally came clean. The confession that day, it was a misunderstanding. I don't like you. Then who do you like, Henry? Johnny clenched his fists, and the moment he mentioned that name, my mind went blank. No, just as I was about to explain, he interrupted me. I saw everything at the cinema entrance. There was a hint of grievance in Johnny's voice. He was so close to you, almost like he was gonna kiss you. He even pinched your cheek. Are you regretting confessing to me? Realized over the past few days that he's the one you really like, right? What? No. Why would you think that? Johnny stepped closer, and an oppressive feeling enveloped me, wrapping me up tight. Why do you like him? What's so attractive about him? You tell me, and I can do it too. I can do better if you like. It was the first time I'd seen Johnny like this, none of his usual gentleness. Only coldness and anger. It was a little scary. By the time I realized it, I'd already been backed up against a big tree by the path. The ground beneath me was muddy, and there was no retreat. You seem too gentle, kind of boring. So I need to reconsider our relationship, is that okay? At that moment, my mind was a mess. I just wanted to find an excuse for us to calm down. But Johnny stopped right in front of me and chuckled softly. In the next second, his big hand clamped around my neck. My body tensed instantly. Johnny's hot breath was burning in my ear. Boring, huh? He repeated those words with a playful tone. So that's what you're into, something wild. You should have said so sooner. He leaned in, forcefully and with a hint of punishment, kissing me intensely. The air got thin. The hand on my neck dropped to my waist. But he didn't give me a moment to catch my breath. Not until I was really close to passing out from lack of oxygen, desperately pounding his shoulder, did he finally let me go. His fingers brushed over my cheek, sending a shiver through me. Really, no feelings for me at all? His fingers paused, pinching my face gently, leaving me no choice but to look up and meet his eyes. Johnny, I don't believe you. And then, his lips were on mine again, giving me no chance to argue. I don't know how long it was until I could finally breathe again. Johnny's gaze was locked on me, reflecting my current appearance in his eyes. Even without seeing clearly, I could feel how disheveled I looked and quickly covered my face. But he pulled my fingers away, one by one. While your mind's still muddled, let me ask you again. Really, not even a little? I was speechless. What does he mean by while my mind's still muddled? The more I listened, the more it sounded like some sort of trickery. But thinking back to the days spent with him and the anticipation when we went out, it's a lie to say I didn't feel anything for him. So, what about you? Do you like me? I looked into his eyes, trying to find any hint of dishonesty. I never thought of myself as anything special. I mean, I'm just an ordinary person. And someone as brilliant as Johnny, I couldn't imagine what he'd see in me. But Johnny met my eyes with a fiery intensity. He said, "Of course I do. Johnny, you might not remember me because back then, I was just a passing face in your life. But I've always remembered you, and I never forgot." He pulled out an old, yellowed photo. In the picture, a young girl, about 7 or 8, in a white floral dress with pigtails. Behind her, a playground slide. I recognized her immediately. That little girl was me when I was young. That park was near my old house. On the slide sat a boy my age, chubby and round. I could see a faint resemblance in his features to Johnny now. I never would have guessed they were the same person. But then it all came back to me. Back in those days, before I moved away, I had a great playmate. He weighed more than other kids our age, all chubby and round. But many young kids, without a filter, used that as an excuse to mock him. They'd even give him awful nicknames that crushed his self-esteem and pride. So he stopped going out, stayed home, locked in his room, crying into a pillow. Johnny looked up at the starry sky, seemingly lost in memories. At the time, I was sick, had to take meds, and ended up overweight due to hormonal imbalances. Couldn't lose it unless I stopped the meds. They mocked me, and no one wanted to play with me. I even got stuck on the slide. Saying this, Johnny chuckled to himself, then turned back to me. "But you were different. You played with me and stood up for me when others laughed, yelling at them until they left. You comforted me, saying I was only like that because of the illness, that it wasn't my fault. You even folded stars for me, saying they held your best wishes, hoping I'd get better soon. It was like being in darkness and..." One day, out of the blue, someone broke into that darkness and carved a crack for him, finally letting the sunlight seep through. It was gentle yet dazzling. Later, Johnny was hospitalized for surgery. The surgery was a success, and he finally could stop taking medication and slowly get back to health. The first thing he did after being discharged was to come find me, eager to share the good news. On the way from the hospital to my place, he thought of so much he wanted to say to me. For instance, from now on, he wouldn't need me to protect him anymore. He would work hard to get strong and protect me instead. Also, how the stars that I folded were so helpful. He received all those blessings, and they all came true. Thanks to me. But by the time he was hospitalized, had surgery, and was released, half a year had passed. By then, I had already moved away with my parents. The house had been sold. So when he knocked on my door, he was met with a stranger's face. He went from initial excitement to disappointment and then sadness and despair. I remembered it too. Because of my parents' sudden job change, we moved hastily. I went to the hospital to find him and tell him, but he was already in surgery. His parents were outside the operating room, anxiously praying, and it wasn't the right time to disturb them. So I waited and waited, but right when the train was about to leave, I had to go. I slid what I originally wanted to give him under the doormat at his doorstep. When Johnny, feeling lost and dejected, returned home later, he stepped on something. Lifting the doormat, he found a talisman meant to ensure a smooth surgery and safety. Under the talisman was a note, "If fate allows, we will meet again." Later, Johnny's family moved away too. But he never gave up looking for me, hoping to meet again. Finally, in our senior year of high school, he saw my name on the city's practice exam rankings. After much effort, he managed to meet me, just catching a glimpse across the street. And there he was, tightly gripping the talisman I once gave him. Because school was hectic, he didn't reveal himself to me then. He studied hard, tirelessly chasing after my grades. Actually, you might have seen me too, back when our names were on that list. In the third city mock exam, Johnny ranked 9th, and I was 10th. But back then, I was so worried about almost falling out of the top 10, I wasn't even thinking about these things. So it was you, I recall now. The guy who surged ahead and nearly knocked me out of the top 10. I pretended to be angry, glaring at Johnny. He pulled me in by the shoulder, feigning a teasing tone. "Can't help it, my girlfriend's so awesome." If I don't try harder, she won't see me at all. When he found out we both got into the same college, he almost lost his mind with happiness. That summer break, he didn't rest, busting his butt working out. He turned the one big up from late night snacking in senior year into a solid six-pack. After school started, he worked even harder to accidentally bump into me, constantly trying to show he was around. But little did he know, I didn't even glance his way. Bring that up now, and Johnny pouts, feeling very wronged. This is the I worked so hard to get for you. I raised an eyebrow. Want me to feel it? Johnny lifted his shirt, eyes squeezed shut. Go ahead, babe. I chuckled. Yeah right, you wish. Not gonna happen. Seriously, I couldn't even look. So when you came by during my confession scene, was that intentional too? Johnny nodded, like a well-behaved puppy. You're so smart, babe. Well. I was there, feeling foolish and guilty, not knowing how to explain this misunderstanding to Johnny. Turns out, this guy was on board with it from the get-go. Such a sly move. No, I wasn't. Johnny laughed, shoving the old talisman from back then into my hand. Didn't you say? If fate allows, we'll meet again. He, like that talisman, circled back, finally returning to my side. But I also knew how much he'd sacrificed to get here. So, do you like me? Johnny dropped the teasing act, looking at me sincerely, asking again. Under his expectant gaze, I stood on my tiptoes, pressing a soft kiss on his lips. Take a guess. Next thing I knew, his arm was wrapped tightly around my waist. Knowing my response, he pulled me into an embrace. Under the moonlight, we kissed, pouring out all those years of longing for one another. Epilogue. Over the short holiday, I packed up in my dorm room and booked 2 tickets to go back home in advance. Johnny had been waiting for me downstairs for ages. Seeing me come out with my suitcase, he came over to take it from me. Both our parents knew about our relationship. They were even happier to find out we were former neighbors, eagerly inviting us home for dinner together. So Johnny and I played rock paper scissors to decide who'd go where first. Best of 3, I won, so we'd head to my place first for a few days, then his. But right at the school gates, someone stopped us. Henry stood there looking pretty beat up, covered in bruises and scratches from long nails. Realizing it was Henry, Johnny and I were both shocked. What happened to you? Before I could finish, Henry started complaining tearfully to Johnny. How did you do it? Nancy didn't even like you at first. I saw you kiss her, and then she was with you. I tried to kiss my crush, but it didn't work. She not only turned me down but also beat me up. Where did I go wrong? I did exactly what you did. As soon as he finished speaking, there was dead silence. Johnny and I glanced at each other, shaking our heads helplessly. Passing by Henry, Johnny patted his shoulder comfortingly, slipping a business card into his hand. Maybe this will help. Meanwhile, I was looking down, texting back my mom. She was asking what Johnny liked to eat and if he had any dietary restrictions. I sent all the details to her. By the time I was done, we'd already left campus. Curious, I asked Johnny, what did you give Henry just now? Johnny replied, the contact for the head of the neurology department. With that, we both couldn't hold back a laugh.